hard to believe that 2018 is over, just about over, and we're just about ready to welcome in a brand new year, and it's a wonderful opportunity for us to do a reset. Some of you are so glad 2018 is over. Others of you are sad that it's almost over because this year has brought either sadness or has brought a lot of joy to you, and so here we go into a new year, and we look at this new year and we consider it just like a bunch of snow that has fallen down. We have the opportunity to make our footprints into this new year in a beautiful and new way. If you have your Bible, I want to invite you to open up to Nehemiah, the passage read a bit ago. We're going to look over that whole book, just kind of one of those 3,000-foot views to kind of check in on what's going on here as we consider our own opportunities that lie ahead of us for the new year. And I want to ask you, how do you know if 2018 was a success or not? Did you just live it in a random way, hoping it would be a success? Or did you live it with intentionality, knowing that you were achieving certain things as you went along, and that those things were intentional by design, you planned for those, and God blessed you and helped you achieve those? And then as we look at 2019, we kind of consider what's going to happen in 2019. Will I move into 2019 with intentionality, or will I just kind of float in and just kind of float through 2019, not really knowing what's going to happen or if it matters what happens, just I'm going to live and I'm going to react to everything. How do you plan to live this next year? What is your mission for next year? Businesses have a mission statement. Organizations have mission statements. All kinds of sports organizations, they have a mission statement. Maybe you want to adopt some kind of a mission statement for your own self over next year that will allow you to know when you achieve some of the things that you have in mind. Several times throughout my ministry with you, I've been able to share some of the questions that Lloyd Ogilvie has given whenever he has considered a major decision. And I love these questions because I live by them. There are two major decisions I'm making right now. And as I'm making these with other people, we sit down and we begin to process what's going on and the major decisions that they entail. And without reading all of them, let's just highlight a couple of them. Here you go. Can you think of any reason the Lord would not want you to make this a yes decision? Is there any reason God does not want you to make this a yes decision? Look at that third one. Can you continue to put the Lord first in your life if you take this opportunity? Number 4, will this opportunity bring you closer to your life goals? Look at the last one. Can you claim the Lord's presence and power as you do this thing? Just go back to number 4 just for a second. Pam and I have moved around a few times. We've probably moved 4 or 5 times. And every time that we have moved, we ask the question, because we had smaller children, younger children with us, we ask the question, will this move be good for our children? Every time. That was a big question. Is the school situation going to be all right for them? And is the church situation going to be conducive to spiritual growth? And then we asked another question, is this going to be okay for our marriage? And so we asked these kinds of questions. And as far as my career goes, I kind of put that down the line. I just kind of asked the question, God, do you want us to go there? Who cares about the career? Is it where you want us to be? Your will be done, and we'll follow you wherever you lead us. I tracked about 11 people that moved away from this church over the last 10 years. And I watched as they moved. They were excited about moving. Pastor, we have this transfer. There's no job here. We have this transfer to another area, and so we're going to go there. And so I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? Oh, no, what's happening? What about your job? Where are you going? Well, they had that down. They knew they were getting a good job. That was great. But then I asked the second question. This one was really most important to me. I said, what's this going to do for your children and for your family? Here's my question, do you have a church you're going to be moving close to? Oh, we don't know, but we're sure we can find it. And you know what I found? About half of those 11 that moved did not plan ahead, did not find a church, did not know anything about what was going to happen with that. And they would call back, text back. They would let me know when they would visit here. We still haven't found a church. We decided our kids weren't for sale. We weren't going to sell them out. I'd rather stay put than move to a place, promotion or not, where it wasn't going to be good for my family. That's just a real interesting thought to pass along to you this morning. Kent Keith, in the Paradoxical Commandments, shares with us some things to think about whenever we interface and interact with other people. And some of the things that he taught us and wants us to understand are really interesting. Now, he wrote this during the Vietnam crisis. And while the Vietnam War was happening, he wrote these. And Mother Teresa had these posted in Calcutta at the place where she served. And these are really good. We won't read them all, but let's look at some of them. They're in an outline in your bulletin if you want to follow along with a couple of them. People are illogical and unreasonable and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good, he says, anyway. On down the line, he says, people really need help, but may attack you if you do help them. Help them anyway. I remember when we were over in the old sanctuary, there was a dear couple that started attending a church, and the guy was taking the lead in his family, bringing them back into church. And he got baptized. And when he went home, his wife made fun of him. You just wanted to be seen. You were just showing off. Who do you think you are? What do you think about all this stuff? Just ridiculing and driving it. But he knew he was doing the right thing. And today he's still walking in faith. And he's still claiming victory in Christ. Because he knew who he was in his heart and where he was headed in his life. And he let that happen. So as we set our goals, we set our dreams, and we consider 2019, we look into our future, we realize that everybody's not going to pat us on the back. Everybody's not going to be for us. There are going to be some people that are going to stand in our way, and it's going to surprise us, some of the people that are going to be the obstacle that tries to keep us from achieving the thing that we want to achieve. Because you see, whenever you do ordinary, whenever you do life just kind of boring, everybody's on that road. Everybody kind of drifts along. But when you decide you're going to take a higher road, you're going to take a road of intention, you're going to start that business, you're going to go get that education, you're going to lose that weight, you're going to do these other things, going to happen to you. Once you decide that, those roads, listen, they're a lot less traveled. They're not crowded highways. The road to excellence is not a crowded road. And many of you walk the road of excellence, and you know that there are not a whole lot of people walking that road with you. So sometimes it might get just a little bit lonely when you go on this road. But you know what? In your heart, it's your life. You know you're going to live it, and you're only living it once. And so what you want to do is make this life count. So let's look at Nehemiah and consider some pro-action steps that he took. Now, I want to say this before we start. I'm a high drive, high motivated guy. I love to accomplish things. I get bored easily. I know that about myself. Some of you are not wired like I am, and that's good. That's why we make a good team. But I will say this about that. You may have come through a year in 2018 that has been really hectic. Your 2019 might be a year of rest and restoration. That may be your goal this year. So you may be trying to get out some of those things that would clutter your schedule. And set those aside, okay? Some of you may need to do that. You may need to heal up. You may just need to settle down. You may need to get perspective from the whirlwind you just came through. It's time to kind of rebuild, regroup, reload, rearm, refresh, all those kind of things, you know. That's another message another day. I'm talking about what Nehemiah knew he needed to do and how he chose to achieve what God had called him to do. So we look at it from that standpoint of his action plan. The first one is found in chapter 1 and verse 4. Notice what happens. Nehemiah put thought and action together to make a great plan. I have a wonderful friend whom I love dearly back in the Midwest who will say to me very often when I see them, and I see them when I go back most of the time, they'll talk about, oh man, exciting future, great things. Here's their phrase, I just have to get in gear. I just have to get in gear. And they say this year after year after year. And so finally, in my kind way, I said, may I say something to you? Yeah. Why don't you quit talking about it and shift gears? It's time to do it. Don't talk about it. Talk's cheap. Do it. You see, we either become the person writing about other people doing something, or we become the person doing something other people are writing about. We either become the person that's doing something or the person standing over here talking about the people that are out there doing something. We can criticize them, we can compliment them, whatever, but we kind of become environmentalists, just kind of looking in on that kind of stuff. If you want to go to the top of your sales in your organization, you're not going to do it standing on the sideline. You're going to do it because you have an action plan, because you have an intentionality about you that's going to take you from where you are to where you need to go. I remember on a very, very, very small scale, we were doing some sales of some stuff to take a school field trip, and they put a $50 prize to it. And I announced to some of my friends, I'm winning the $50 prize. And they said, no, you're not. Somebody else will win that. Nobody from here ever wins that. I said, no. You're sitting right now with the guy who's going to win that. I won that 2 years in a row because I decided I'm going to win that. No one will outsell me. No one will outstrip this. If I was leading a business in this area, I would want to do it just the same way. Since I'm leading a church, I'm trying to do that the same way. We're going to be the best we can be. We're going to make the impact for Christ we can make, that He might look good, that His name might be lifted up, that people will be drawn to Him because we with excellence do the ministry that He has called us to do. With intentionality, we have the small groups. With intentionality, we do discipleship. With intentionality, we have a marriage conference. With intentionality, we have the music the way we do. With intentionality, we have greeter station, parking lot people. It's on purpose that we do the announcements the way we do usually. And it's on purpose that we're preaching through series of messages that we're preaching through. It's that God might help us and guide us into the way He wants us to go, to be able to accomplish what He wants us to accomplish while we live on this earth during this time. It's on purpose. And Nehemiah, his heart, in chapter 2, by the time you get there, you see it is governed with this whole idea of doing something for God, that God was calling him to do. It was something extraordinary. It was something special. His heart was driven by this. Israel had been freed by Cyrus of Persia. Nehemiah worked for Cyrus of Persia. And he knew something about what was going on. And God was raising up Nehemiah in that setting to become a catalyst to go back among his own people and to do something extraordinary. God wanted him to do this. And listen to this, he dared to believe that among his own people, he could become a catalyst. He could become the rusty nail to those that needed a rusty nail. You follow that imagery? That agitates and gets people motivated. He could be the beacon of hope to those who were not standing up and saying, we can do this. He was going to be that voice crying out in the wilderness. He was going to be the person who would dare to step out of line and say, things aren't right this way. They ought to be over here. We can do this with God. He dared to believe that God was calling him into something that would be extraordinary. He looked around, and here's what he saw. God had freed the people of Israel. Ezra, 75 years before, has rebuilt the temple, but the city itself is in ruin. And here's why that motivated his heart. It looked like God's judgment was still on Israel. It looked like they did not have God's favor. It looked like they were people without a promise. It looked like they were people who would never produce a Messiah. And he was worried about that. And he says, no, this can't be. Now, sometimes just because we see a need doesn't mean we're the one to do it. Sometimes because we're motivated doesn't mean we're the one to lead the charge. But he was motivated, saw the need, got in gear. He was the guy to lead the charge. And his particular job was not to rebuild the temple. That's already done, right? His job is to rebuild the walls. And to rebuild the walls of the city of Jerusalem. This is what he's going to do. And it's going to be a big project for him to participate in this, to rebuild these walls and to get the city looking like it's not in ruin and in rubble, because a lot of the places were torn down. And now he's here to recover this kind of stuff. He says that he sees things in chapter 1, 2, 4, and 5 that are disgraced and mocked. They're mocking God. They're disgracing God. Look at verse 4. God puts it in his heart, the motivation to restore the city wall. What would you do if you were motivated? If you're Nehemiah, what would you do? Here's what he did. He prays to God. He talks to God after he hears this message. And as he hears this message that the walls are still messed up and the city looks like it's in ruin. And then what he did, he went to the king and the queen and he said, may I have audience with you for a moment? I believe God wants me to go back among my people and help motivate them to build the wall. And you know what? He sized it up, and he says, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to go do this. And so God laid it on his heart. During this coming year, God may have laid something on your heart He may have already spoken to you about something that he wants you to do. Something he wants you to start, something he wants you to stop. This is a year. You've talked about it, you've thought about it, you have that pattern, and you want it to end. You don't want to be addicted to that any longer, whatever it is. You don't want to have those thoughts anymore. You don't want to talk that way anymore. You don't want to live that way anymore. You don't want to be that person. You're going to have to change some patterns. Or maybe you need to start up something, and in starting it up, you've got to meet some people that are further along than you are, that understand it a little bit more than you do. You've got to meet up with some people that are bigger than you in this area. When we were going to build this building, we took trips to see people that were bigger than us, that were further along than us, that already knew how to do some of this kind of stuff. And we talked to them. We didn't want to make the same mistakes, so we asked them, what are your successes? What are your failures? What's going on with this? And we became students. And sometimes we have to listen to this, we have to humble ourselves down to say, I am a student. I am here before God, and I'm here before this person who is his servant. Teach me what you want me to know. Show me the way that I should go. And in those moments, God uses those people to speak into our life. Can I get a witness in the house somewhere? Another proactive step, look at chapter 2. Nehemiah, he embraced necessary changes. Man, he embraced these necessary changes. This is awesome. He's embracing these necessary changes. Now, some people don't like change. Every church I've been in, every state I've lived in, place I grew up, here and every, there are people who don't like change. And when I say don't like change, I don't mean they don't like it when somebody gives them change back at the cash register. They, ladies and gentlemen, don't like change. They don't like colors to change. They don't like the time changing. They don't like anybody changing. They'd stop everything right like it is and stay there into infinity. That isn't the way it is it? Things change. Everything changes. Turn to your neighbor and say change. Would you say that? Change happens. And you may or may not like it, but it's happening. You're changing. You're changing from about an hour ago to now. We're changed. We've already made some decisions in our mind. We've already had some thoughts. We've already lived some life. We're already changed. He's going to change job. Instead of working there with the king, he's going to go out and work on the wall. That's quite a change, isn't it? He's going to change. He's willing to change location. Instead of being in the palace helping out, he's going to go out there and take a trowel, and he's going to take some of the lumber, and he's going to put some of the blocks in place. He's going to do whatever he has to do to get everything going the right way it has to go. And to be able to live in 2019 in a victorious way, some of you are going to have to drive farther to get done what you have to do. Some of you are going to have to read more and study more, learn more to be able to do what God is calling you to do. You're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to do it? Am I willing to pay the price to take the step in the direction that God is calling me to go? To become who he wants me to become, to do whatever it is he wants me to do. And you're going to have to do that with discipline. And even if you have a year where you need to just sit still and be still and know that he's God, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to fight for that. That will not happen if you simply go along, because there's going to be enough push and shove on your life that's going to come intruding and calling on your life to where you're going to have to make some decisions. You're going to have to learn how to say no. You're going to have to learn how to say yes. And you're going to have to become a student of those that do. It's an amazing thing. Now notice something else. Nehemiah navigated the challenges. Look at chapter 4. He's going to navigate these challenges that are going to come into his life. Listen to this. Anything worth achieving is going to cost you something. Am I right? Yes. Am I right? Anything worth achieving is going to cost you something. If you're going to trade your car, you can get you another car. It's going to cost you something. If you're going to downsize your house, you're going to have to get rid of some stuff. It's going to cost you something. If you're going to downsize yourself, it's going to cost you something. You're going to get rid of the front porch. It's going to cost you something. If you're going to get some education, it's going to cost you something. You're going to have to study some. You're going to have to go to some seminars. You're going to have to read some. If you want to grow more spiritually, it's going to cost you something. It's a discipline of meditating before him, of praying, of listening, of reading your Bible. You're going to have to open it. It's going to cost you something. It's going to cost all of us something if we're going to do these kinds of things. One thing that I've known about myself is when I get around people that are further down the road than I am in areas, it challenges me. Now, I am not a good golfer. I like to hack and whack, okay? So I'm not a good golfer. I'm just not a good golfer. But I do enjoy golfing once in a while. And so when I go golfing, I know I'm going to either go with one of two crowds, basically. There may be some in between, but one of two crowds. Either some guys that are pretty serious about it and like to play a good game, and they know how to keep their score, and they don't cheat, they keep their score. And then I go with some other people, and they hack and whack, and they spend more time in the woods than they do on the fairway. And I know that. So we max out our scores, all the time. So I know how to golf. I'm not good either way, really. But, I'm good at going in the woods, but I'm not that good at. But I know this about my golf game. Chris, when I'm out there golfing and I go out with good golfers, I play up. Andrew and I one time performed a twosome against some of our relatives out in Missouri. They golfed all the time, took lessons and all that kind of stuff, and we had to play them. And I thought, oh my stars. We played up and we beat them. We just took our clubs along thinking maybe we use them, I don't know. Haven't used them all year, maybe we'll get them out. But he hit some moon shots, and I got some lucky shots. And for whatever reason that day, their pancakes didn't help them at all. And we put a whooping on them, and it was so fun. But that's a rare moment. If you're really going to go, but the point is, you start playing up when you get around people that are up. And you know what? God had Nehemiah placed in a place where he would think up thoughts. He's there with the king in the king's house. Esther was in the king's house. You see this? God places us in different places that we might learn. It's not just that we're privileged and can walk around and be introduced well. We're placed in places where we might be able to align with His favor and His will and be able to see something happen that's extraordinary. And Nehemiah is going to leverage the knowledge of the king and the queen for his purposes and God's purposes, and it's going to be an amazing thing. But everybody is not going to go with you. Some people are going to insult you. There are going to be some people that are going to say to you, hey, guess what? Doesn't matter. You're not all that. You just came from that. You're nothing. But whenever you realize what God has raised up, you realize He has you on purpose. And He has raised you up for a purpose. Among you, I'm Pastor Kevin. We have a level of friendship and Christian friendship and respect and a level of understanding of each other. When I go back home, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I am Kev. And I am the youngest. And they let me know that. And in the pecking order, I am down here. But when I come back here, I move back into a different level. And when they come here and see me once in a while, they're amazed because they see me here. You see me here. See what I'm saying? God raises us up. And some people around us may look at it and say, well, you're not all that. Chapter 2, verses 9 through 16. Nehemiah learned some people are going to walk, listen to this, some people are going to walk into your life and some people are going to walk out of your life. That's the rhythm of life. But he also realized that he had some unfaithful Israelites. You'd think all the Israelites would be in favor of cleaning up the city, but they were not. They don't see it the same way. Who cares? We've got a family picnic scheduled. Who cares? Nobody's bothering. We're free, dude. That ought to be good enough. And he said, no. We need to clean up the mess because it looks like God's favor is not on us. It looks like God's not blessing us. We've got to do some stuff about all of this kind of stuff. He realized some people are going to be out of his life. TDJ said this, I think is very interesting. He said a lot of good stuff, but he said this. He said, there are people who can walk away from you. And hear me when I tell you this, he says, when people can walk away, let them walk. I don't want you to try to talk another person into staying with you, loving you, calling you, caring about you, coming to see you, staying attached to you. I mean, he says, hang up the phone. When people walk away from you, let them walk. Your destiny was never tied, listen to this, your destiny was never tied to anybody who left you. Did you think of that? Your destiny was never tied to anybody that left you. The Bible says they came out from us that it might be made manifest that they were not for us. For if they had been for us, the Scripture says, no doubt they would have continued with us. When we were building this building, I was so surprised whenever one of my mentor friends ahead of me said to me, some of the people will not take that journey with you. They will leave the church. And I'm like, no, maybe they left your church, but they're not going to leave this church. And then it started happening. I saw some people who they could not handle worship in here. Nope, they could not stand. It wasn't. And they started. And you know what? When you start putting a name and a face, and somebody starts leaving, I laid there and stared at the ceiling at night. And I said, God, and I realized they weren't with us anyway. Not bad people, just weren't with us. He goes on to say this. It doesn't mean that they were bad people. It just means that their part of the story is over. And some people have left your company, but it doesn't mean your company has to fold. And some people have left your family, but it doesn't mean your family has to fold. This is me talking to you. Listen, God is for us and working in us, and we want to be able to continue to walk with Him. This battle belongs to the Lord. Am I right? Now let me share something with you that I've shared before, but it needs to be shared in a moment like this. Ann and Ray Ortland said something that early on in my ministry helped me out. Early on in my Christian walk, and I use this in my Christian walk, and I use this in parenting, and I use this in marriage, and I use this in leadership, and I use this in staff development, and I use this in my life in all kinds of areas. Every time you have a dream, every time you stand up at the beginning of a new year and you set out for your place, for your company, for your business, for your life, some kind of new dream, you have the big idea. I'm going to go on that diet. Woo-wee! Going on that diet. You go get a gym, sign up at a gym and get your little placard, and you feel good about that, and it fits on you nicely, and you've got the A zone over here, and then you've got the B zone where you start actually getting up and going to the gym, and you don't like it, and you don't feel good doing all that kind of stuff, and it becomes drudgery, and then you're going to have the opportunity to hit what he calls the Q zone, which is the quit zone. Or you can stay in that until you get to the C zone, until you break through some of those hurdles and come to the C zone, which is the victory zone. You know what happens to a lot of us? We get over here with our dream and our vision in the A zone, and we want to cut the cake. We want to have the party because of what's going to happen. I say to you, why not get over here and remember that talk is cheap, dreams can't be weighed, they can't be measured, and begin to understand I've got to put it in gear. Shift it into gear in the B zone. Say, I'm not even thinking about quitting. When you hit a Q, I'm not going to quit. You keep moving on over here, and here's where you do the celebrating. Here's where you do the party. Great is your reward if you'll stay faithful to the end. This works in marriage. I do, Yahoo. Take out the trash, 3 square meals a day, got to pay the bills, you stink, take a shower. Lawn needs to be mowed. Oh boy. You did what? What'd you say to me? Q zone. I'm going to trade you in. Walmart's running a special. I'm trading you in. Or you have a child. Oh, rock-a-bye, baby. You're sweet. Oh, you stink. You need new tennis shoes? We just bought them last week. You need some more? You're growing so much, kid. Quit eating. Q zone over here. If I had listened to some people and the leadership of the church had listened to some people, we wouldn't be sitting here today with as many people as we'll have through the weekend, and 2,800 people through our last weekend with candlelight and everything. Wouldn't have had that if we had been staying right back here and listened to some of these people. Not going to listen to them. You got to choose who you're going to listen to. You've got to choose to let go of some people. Jack Hayford in his book, Who's in Charge? He said it this way. I love Jack Hayford, and his writing was incredible. He said this, some people are, his word, not mine, they're parasites. You've got to decide every time they come up to you, they're going to drain you of energy. Are you going to stay around that? And some of you, to be able to achieve, listen to this, to be able to achieve the goal you need to in 2019, are going to have to let go of some of the friends you have that continually drag you back and drag you down and don't take you to the place you need to go. You've got to say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I'm going this way with God. He's called me to this vision. He's called me to this dream. He's called me to this plan, and this is the direction I've got to go. I'm not judging you. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm telling you this is the way I've got to live my life. And I'm going to cut bait, and I'm going to go this way. I wish you could take the journey, and you may never tell them this out loud, but privately you live this way, and you keep on going and make the journey, and God can help you be able to achieve the things you need to achieve. Look what Nehemiah did. Here's how he responded. He prayed to God in chapter 1, and in chapter 4, he got a plan. At nighttime, he went around and surveyed the city and the walls and everything that was going on. And then in chapter 4, look at it there. They armed themselves against the enemy. They had to arm themselves because so many people were against them. And basically what happened is they've got people on safety patrol who are ready to do battle, and even the guys doing the building, if we put it in a current term, packed their pistols with them in case they needed to do battle in the moment that was right around them. And there may be some times where you get in the midst of your dream and the midst of God's calling in your life and the midst of what He wants you to do in 2019, and you'll be tempted at the Q zone to say, I got to quit because they're barking so loud, because they said this, because they think that. You've got to remember what God has called you to and remember what God has put in your heart, and you've got to live that dream out in the way that He wants you to live it out and not allow yourself to be turned aside because you know in advance you're going to have problems. Go ahead and tell your neighbor you're going to have problems. You see, nothing great ever happens without conflict. All right, you're listening kindly. Let me hit this last one real quick. Nehemiah accomplished a goal. He finally hit the C zone, didn't he? Chapter 6, you can see it. He did what God had called him to do. Other people joined him in the occasion. They began to put the gates back in place. They began to clean up the city so it didn't look like God wasn't really with them. God really didn't care about them. He had to fight off hostile enemies and those unwelcoming Israelites. Some of them were just that way. But he was faithful and productive. See, it's not just enough to be faithful, but we want to be faithful and productive. You remember the parable about the guys who were given the talents? One guy was given this many, another was given this many, another was given just one. When the master comes back, he says to the first one, well done, good and faithful. To the second one, well done, good and faithful. To the last one who buried his and did nothing, just sat there and said, I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to bury this. I'm going to keep it safe. He said, you crazy person. And he took that and gave it to the guy who had done much. And one of the reasons God never trusts some of us with anything is because we're not willing to do anything with what He trusts us with. And one reason sometimes God's not going to trust us with more is because we're not faithful with what He has given us. Good and faithful. Nehemiah wasn't just there. He was good and he was faithful. I think this is powerful. So what is your map for 2019? What is your map for 2019? Map, what's it mean? We'll look in our notes there. My action plan. What is your action plan to go from where you are to where you need to go? Pastor Mike and Dwight and I sat last night. We talked about an action plan on something we're working on. It was an action plan. We've had conversations throughout the weekend, off and on, various points. What's our action plan about a particular thing? What is your action plan? Something that propels victory in the next year. Someone described it this way as we bring the plane in for landing. Someone described it this way. I think it's probably right. Anybody like to do puzzles? Lift your hand if you like to do puzzles. Yeah, 3 or 4 of you. And a lot of you do. I like to do some puzzles too sometimes. When that box comes off that shelf and you say, this is the one I want, you believe that it has all 1,000 pieces in it, right? You believe it does. You trust that the puzzle maker, puzzle producer, put those pieces in that box. And you go home and you say, guess what? I'm going to live out this dream, putting this puzzle together, right? Now, God says to you, guess what? 2019 is just ahead. 2019 is just ahead. I've got all the pieces of the puzzle. You don't see the picture yet except a vision of what it's going to be. But when you come over here and sit down, you're going to start seeing the border come together, the colors start, pretty soon you see what's happening, and you're going to be putting this, you don't have the business plan exactly clear, you don't have the exact, but you see the context, you see what's happening here? So over Christmas break, I bought a puzzle, and there it is. I put that 1,000-piece puzzle together with a little bit of help. I stayed up till 3 o'clock one night, putting this 1,000-piece puzzle together. I saw the end of that puzzle coming clearer, and the pieces started making a little more sense, and they were big enough. And you know what? 3 o'clock in the morning, I was down on my hands and knees underneath that table, looking for one piece that went on the top mantle of that fireplace. All right? I'm looking for that one piece. I'm literally down on the floor, seeing if it's under the pedestals of the dining room. Good grief, it's got to be here. I wondered if it was maybe in a pocket of something. Where did that piece go? I didn't know, and I thought I trusted the owner to give me all of these pieces. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you going to do? I'm blurry-eyed. I'm not thinking very well. I said, I'm going to go crash. So I went in and I crashed. Next morning I get up, or next afternoon, whatever it was. I got up. I went in the other room and I said, Pam, that puzzle, it's missing one piece. She said, no, it's not. I said, yes, it is. I thought she just didn't see it because it's over the fireplace, kind of blend in with the table. She said, no, it's not. I saw it was missing a piece. And I looked, and it was over here under this stuff. It had gotten slid under some papers that were over there. And I put it in. I looked at the puzzle, and I said, oh, my stars. And I've got a feeling God's going to come in just like Pam did and says, God, I don't know where the other piece is of this puzzle. And he says, I've got it. I've got it. I handed you a box this morning. He knows what's in it. Go put it together. God bless you, keep you, cause his face to be shiny all over you, and give you favor and protection all around as you move into 2019.